We are blessed to have our next speaker, Dr. Kitty Harris, and I have the privilege of introducing her to you guys today. Dr. Kitty Harris is a professor emeritus at Texas Tech University. She is the CEO and president of NLW Partners, a research, education, and addiction recovery consulting firm. She also serves as a president of Track9 Informatics, a gold standard clinical assessment instrument tracking outcomes for those in treatment with substance use disorders or mental health concerns. She is a noted public speaker at national conferences, workshops, and seminars on topics including adolescence, substance abuse prevention, addiction and recovery, and communication, civility, and leadership. Dr. Harris currently holds LCDC and licensed marriage and family therapist licenses. She is the author of Women in Recovery, Finding Hope, and co-editor of Substance Abuse Recovery in College. She has served for 12 years as the director of the Center for the Study of Addiction and Recovery at Texas Tech University, and under her leadership, they gained national attention, appearing in Wall Street Journal, on the NBC Today Show, CNN, and featured in the Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Ed, and the New York Times. For 6 years, she was also Associate Dean of the College of Human Sciences at Texas Tech University. Dr. Harris has been the recipient of numerous awards. In 2007, she won the America Honors Recovery Award for her efforts in working with college students in recovery. She received the Distinguished Service Award in 2008 from the Texas Tech University Alumni Association. In 2012, Dr. Harris was the first recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award presented by the Association of Recovery and Higher Education, and was named Woman of Excellence in Education by the Lubbock YWCA. She has also been named a Distinguished Alumna of the Texas Tech College of Human Sciences in 2001 and was named the Texas Women's Hall of Fame Office of the Governor of Texas in 1993. She serves on the advisory board of the Margaret Talkington School for Young Women Leaders, a public single-gender college prep school for girls in Lubbock ISD, president of the Young Women Leaders Foundation and the advisory board of Lubbock National Bank. And previously, she has served on the board of directors for Lubbock National Bank and the Commerce National Bank of Austin in College Station. She was the vice president of the board of directors of the J.T. and Margaret Talkington Charitable Foundation. So, her lengthy bio tells all the great things that she has done, and we are very privileged to have her here today, but I'm going to add a little bit extra. On a personal note, Dr. Kitty Harris was actually one of my professors at Texas Tech, and she single-handedly shaped the entire career path that I took from there on out. If there was a class that she offered, I didn't even care what it was. I was taking it. And I was very blessed to be able to have that. Later on, many years later, one of my older children was struggling, and her family interceded and saved his life wholeheartedly. So, on a personal note, please help me thank Dr. Kitty Harris.
Wow. Oh, wait. Okay, got it. Oh, thank you so much. I have a lot of things to say. That first presentation just kind of blew me away a little bit, and I was talking to Laura before they left that I know how much that took for her to, get up here and talk and make that presentation. The thing that I told her that bothered me the most is that those were things I was saying 30 years ago, and here we are. I mean, if you had sat in my class, those were the things I was saying 30 years ago. And here we are, still struggling and losing kids right and left, and that's devastating. So anyway, my first thought was, I was going to say to Megan, seriously, I have to follow that? like, couldn't you have given me something a little bit less, you know, engaging? But it's good. Speaking of Megan, I want to publicly thank her. I have privately, but I want to publicly thank her for being so patient with me. One of my big addictions is that I overbook. And I have had a crazy, crazy fall with this and that and this and that. And one of the things, every time she'd send me an email, I'd say, okay, well, I'll get this to you as soon as I can. And then I didn't. And then she would email me again and I would say, okay, I'll get this to you, I promise, when I get back to town. Speaking someplace else. Anyway, thank you. She was kind, she was considerate, she was very committed to helping me get here this morning. I actually drove in from Dallas last night from another engagement, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to work on not saying yes is what I need to work on the most. You know that. It's hard. It's a hard place to be. I'm glad to be with you this morning. I have some different things to say. I have some things that I've spoken at this conference before, and I love it because it makes me know our community is trying hard to deal with the struggles that we have. And I want to talk about something, a couple of things this morning that I think are important. I think they're important to hear. And I want to talk a little bit about a fresh look at addiction and recovery. And I want to talk about some things we've learned and some things we're still struggling to learn to help us to help each other. And there are a couple of ways that I want to do this. First of all, I want to talk about how many of you are aware of the Surgeon General's report that came out in May of this year? Anybody? Thank you, Mark. You better be. You better be aware of it. Not too many of you. Well, let me start out by saying this, and then I'm going to, and trust me that I'm going to wrap all this together and pull it together for you. The Surgeon General of the United States came out with a report in May of this year identifying what he found to be the largest, most disastrous epidemic in our country. Epidemic in our country. And anybody besides Mark know what it is? This is going to shock you, because some of you are probably thinking, well, I bet it was substance abuse. I bet it was alcohol and drug use. No, that's not what it was. What it was is loneliness. Loneliness. And I want to talk to you about that with respect to alcohol and drug use and abuse, because I think there is a huge key there. Back in the olden days, before some of you were born, I'm really not as old as I sound, but I have been around a while. Addiction was called, in the field, in the literature, addiction was called a disease of isolation. A disease of isolation. And I think what you'll find today is that is still true. That so many people that struggle with addictive disorders struggle with the ability to connect to other people and be with other people. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. And I want to talk about those, and I want to make a point to be sure that I get in some of the things that I really want you to hear. One of the things that the Surgeon General report said that is shocking, it was the most shocking to me, and I'm going to read this because I want to make sure that I get it right, is that loneliness increases the risk of premature death by 26%. Increases the risk of premature death by 26%, which equals as much as much as smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes a day. So what the Surgeon General said was that you are healthier, and this is just as overwhelming to think about, but it's true, and he wrote about it, and he had the data to support it. You are healthier smoking a pack and a half of cigarettes a day than you are being an isolated, lonely person, because of the things that it brings into your life in terms of premature death, in terms of isolation. One of the things that I think is important to realize is that so often, if you look at addiction, what you find is isolation and what you find is loneliness. I think the presentation that Laura made about her son absolutely responds to that, is that isolation, something's wrong, I'm not okay, what can I do? And part of what I want us to think about is that so much of what recovery is what? Recovery is about connection. Recovery is about connection. It's about being with people. It's about sharing our stories with people. It's about the willingness to reach out to others. And so I want to, with the idea of so much of the isolation and loneliness being what we struggle with, I want to spend some time today looking at a couple of things with respect to resilience. Anybody know what resilience is? You better raise your hand, some of you. Okay. I mean, if you do not know what resilience is, we are in trouble. Okay. So resilience is that willingness and that ability to bounce back. You know, I got knocked down, but I can bounce back. I got thrown to the side, but I can get in with the flow. I can come back. I can be resilient. And I want to talk about some of the things that I think are so important with resilience. And I was so, well, and let me say this. And I told Laura I was going to say this. So if any of you have heard me speak before, I always have a PowerPoint, always, okay? But I don't have one today, and there's a reason. And I'm going to work my way into it, but I'm going to tell you this up front. The reason is I'm going to talk about screens. And I forgot to bring my phone to the podium, but I want to talk about screens in a minute. And what I want you to do today is I want you to connect to me. I don't want you to connect to that. And that is part of what I want you to understand about isolation and loneliness, is we have become a culture of screens. How many of you in this room do not have an iPhone? Awesome. Well, I want to get to know y'all. Okay. How many of you do not have a computer or use a computer? That would be nobody. iPads. We have become a culture of screens. I want you to think about it for a minute. Think about how much time you spend on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, whatever. And think about how much time you spend with people, one-on-one or small group, whatever. Because part of what I want to really focus on is the idea of the Surgeon General's report that talks about our epidemic of loneliness and how that so incredibly ties in to addiction being a disease of isolation. So it's been more than a couple of years. So let's say 10 years ago, I got to be a part of a really exciting research project at the university. And what I wanted to look at was resilience. What helped people bounce back? What helped people be okay? And I was interested in it because of addiction. And so we did an actually brain study, we did some neuroscience studies to look at what was it that allowed people to become resilient? Because from my perspective, working in this field for a long time, I won't say how many years because then I really will sound old, is that working in this field, oh no, see, I mean, my wrist rings. Now that is disgusting, but you know, it is disgusting. And it rings all the time. But one of the things that's so important, I think, is to begin to be very honest and very forthcoming when we look at addiction and resilience. I love the pink hat, I got to tell you. First thing, number one, there are 3 things we found neurologically with our brain study that contributed to and helped build resilience. Number 1. Anybody know what number 1 is? Social support. That is number 1. The number 1 thing that helps you bounce back after you've been knocked down, the number 1 thing that's helped you to come back, to be okay, to get back in the swing of things, social support. Social support. And then, and I know a lot of you here, a lot of you I don't know, but I would ask you to just think about this. Those of you that work in the field of recovery, what's one of the number 1 things that's done for people that struggle with addiction? They put you get together. You go into recovery groups. You find a sponsor. You work in groups together. You work in group therapy. Whatever it is, the reality of it is the number 1 thing that we do to help people that are struggling with addictive disorders is that we provide social support. And I think that what's so important about that today is the idea that if loneliness is the epidemic we're struggling with, now more than ever, we really need a chance to provide social support to people. And we need the opportunity and the chance to get people together. And let me just tell you, I'm not here to bash technology, okay? So if any of you are technology people, don't get upset with me. I'm not here to bash it, but I am here to call your attention to it. How many of you have ever walked into a restaurant lately and you see a family sitting in a booth and everybody has a phone or a screen? I see it all the time. Yes, thank you for raising your hand. Yes, it's out there. It's out there. I walked into a restaurant the other day, and my first thought was, ooh, that's a perfect example for my speech. I walked into this restaurant, and there were these 2 really cute young people, and they were sitting in a small booth, shoulder to shoulder, okay? And they had their food out in front of them, and both of them were on their phones. So here they are together for dinner, and they're not talking to each other. When you walk into a restaurant, you see the same thing. I was in an airport the other day. This sounds really dramatic, so I don't want to be too dramatic, but almost everybody in the airport was on their telephone. They were, all over the whole terminal. And no one was talking to each other. No one was experiencing social support. And I think in an airport, you can get by with that, but not at dinner, not with your family, not at a restaurant, not when you have a chance to get to know someone and express ideas to someone. And so one of the things that I think that we have to think about in dealing with addiction and recovery is that now more than ever, we have to stress social support. We have to stress that people be together, that people talk to each other, that people experience friendship and be able to pull together a social network. I am scared, honestly, for our kids. I am genuinely scared. My little grandkids have 1 million toys at our house. Guess what they want? Yeah, they want my iPad. That's what they want. They don't want the train. They don't want the stuffed dinosaurs, even though he loves dinosaurs. They want my iPad. And I think that part of what the Surgeon General's report was reflecting was that whole concept of what loneliness has and is doing to our culture. And that's one of the scariest things that I can think about. So the second thing, I'm going to talk about 3 things in terms of resilience. I think I'm going to do this quickly. I'm going to talk about the second thing, and the second thing is what we called structured style. Now, I wouldn't really expect anybody in here much to know what structured style is, because it's not a term we use a lot, but it's something that we do a lot. And again, we're looking at resilience, how to bounce back, how to come back, how to put your life back together. And structured style turned out to be the second most important element in developing resilience. And what it is, and those of you that are a little OCD are going to love this, what it is the ability to put your life together each day and provide structure. There was a great book that was written by, and I wish I could remember his name, but I can't. It was written by one of the Air Force generals who spoke at a commencement address, I think at Harvard or Yale, and it became famous. And it became so famous, he wrote a book about it. And this is what it is. Get up in the morning and do what? Make your bed. Yay, you guys got that good. Make your bed. Make your bed. That is structured style. I'm going to get up. I'm going to make my bed. I'm going to get up. I'm going to feed the dog. I'm going to get up. I'm going to, get my day going. And one of the things that's so important about structured style and resilience is it gives you a pattern. It gives you a format to follow. It gives you the opportunity to say, these are the things that I'm going to do that are going to make my day go well. And so if you look at that and you think, well, why does that really impact resilience? Why does that really impact, the fact that I'm going to hit some hard times and I'm going to bounce back? And the reason is it gives you a map. It gives you a roadmap for your day. It gives you a map to be able to do the things that you want to do. It allows you to have a style to your life. I'm going to make my bed. I'm going to get up. I'm going to feed the dog. That's what I do. I feed the dog first. And it allows you to be able to really develop a pattern and an outline for your life that gives you a chance to be able to know what you're going to do. So how many of you, if you were to think about that right now, structured style, how many of you think that at some level, to some degree, you have that kind of taken care of, or you do that pretty much in your life? Good. Okay. How many of you think it has mattered to you? Yeah. It does. It allows you to keep a calendar, even if it's on your phone. It allows you to be able to know what you're going to do next when you're finished here. So one of the things that I think that's important when you think about resilience and recovery is that you help people to begin to structure their lives. One of the things that happens in addiction, and whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, whether it's, opioids, whatever, one of the things that helps in recovery is to gain back a structure, is to gain that back, because it's one of the things that we don't have. Active addiction does not provide structure. The only thing we want to know is where we're going to get the next drink or the next joint or the next hit. That's what we want to know. And so the idea of structuring your life in such a way that you're able to think about what you're going to do next and what's the right thing to do next gives you a wonderful opportunity to be in a state of recovery. I think that of all the people that I've worked with through the years, the ones that have been the most successful and the ones that have found the greatest sense of happiness and satisfaction have been those that have been able to begin to find a structure to their life. Okay, so we have social support, right? And that's really, really important. And we have structured style, which gives us a means of putting things together and a means of organizing ourselves. The third thing we found, which was not surprising at all, and I think it's so important, and I think that Laura did beyond a fabulous job of presenting the way she did today. The third thing we found was family support. Family support. And remember, this is for resilience, that ability to bounce back. Once you get into trouble, once you struggle, once things are hard for you, you're able to bounce back from that. So family support comes in a couple ways. It comes sometimes in people just showing up. You know, I'm here for you. I care about you. You mean something to me. I believe in you. You know, to listen to Laura talk about her son, I hope that you heard what I heard. What I heard was love and sadness. That's all I heard. I didn't hear condemnation. I didn't hear, you know, look what he did to us. Look at how he's impacted our lives in such a negative way. No, none of that. None of that. I heard support. I heard love. I heard care. And that's what builds resilience, is that ability to feel like you've got people behind you. You've got people that care about you. You've got people that absolutely believe that they believe in you and they believe that you mean something to them. So often in addiction, and I'm sure those of you that have been there, done that, know this, that one of the first things that goes is your family support. I've done everything. I don't know what else to do. You've embarrassed our family, you've upset our family, you've whatever. And I think the importance of understanding family support with respect to resilience is the reality that that is so needed. It's important to know you've got somebody behind you. It's important to know that there's somebody there supporting you. It's important to know that you have someone that's going to stand next to you and help you walk the path of recovery. And I think so often, with respect to addiction and recovery, we forget that there has to be support. Very few people recover on their own in isolation. Throughout all these years, I can't even really think of anybody on their own in isolation without somebody, family member, friend, buddy, whatever. But the idea is it's so important to be able to have support, preferably from your family. Okay, so let me kind of pull this together, and I want to make sure that I got everything I wanted to get, because that's the other thing I do bad. One of the things, if you think about the Surgeon General's report on loneliness, and I want you to think about the people that you work with, some of the people you live with, maybe some of the friends you have. I want you to think about the concept of loneliness. Is it there? Do you see it? Do you know? If I ask everybody in this room today, if you are lonely, raise your hand. I'm not asking you to, but you can. That's good. I mean, there would be a hesitancy to do that. You know, there's a hesitancy to say, you know, I'm kind of lonely. I don't really have anybody that I connect to, that I'm friends with, that I, you know, support. And yet, I have to tell you that two things of interest is that I was able to talk about this at, let me see, I want to make sure, I try to be anonymous sometimes where I have experiences with people. It was at another organizational, it was something just like this, only it wasn't for this organization. It was for something else. And so there were a lot of kids there, a lot of junior high and high school students were there. And so they had asked me to talk about loneliness. And so I did what I just did with y'all. I said, I'm not going to ask you, but you know, if I were to ask all of you, if you were lonely, if you would raise your hand, and I've got to tell you, the entire almost back of the room raised their hands. They were almost all girls, and they were almost all in junior high. You're shaking your head. You know what I mean. And I was just like, I mean, my first thought was just to go hug them all, you know, and say, it's okay. You know, you're going to be okay, and you're going to meet some people, and I'm going to help you find these people, and whatever. And that realization to me was that the issue is bigger than we think. And I think, based a lot on what Laura said up here, that one of the things I used to talk about all the time, I guess to no avail in some respects, if she can get up here and tell those kind of statistics, was age at onset. One of the most important things she said, in my opinion, was age of onset. You know, when you begin using chemicals in a brain that is not even close to developing, not even close to finishing developing, then you change your entire path of your life. And one of the things that brings people to that early on is loneliness. And kids use together to bond together. Kids often use drugs to connect to other kids. And so it's so important to realize that what we're struggling with is more than just addictive disorders. You know, you can say that, you know, we're struggling with addiction, yeah, but are we struggling with loneliness? Are we struggling with a lack of place to identify? And then my personal concern right now, as you can already tell, are we struggling with technology and screens? You know, are we finding it easier for kids to connect on an iPhone than to talk in person to each other? And based on the heads moving, yes, that is the case. That is the case. And it's one of the things that I think we really have to look at. You don't think about looking at talking about substance abuse and addictive disorders and talk about, you know, screen time, but you got to believe me, it is true. It is true. That sense of being isolated, that sense of not being a part of, that sense of being kept away from are things that make drugs and alcohol seem so much more attractive. I think that one of the things that we don't think about as professionals in the field is how did you get here? What happened back here that got you here? And I think it's one of the things we have to think about, and we have to look at, and we have to talk about. Is that if you said to somebody, oh, I went to a program today, it was on alcohol and drugs, it was called Source to Solution, and the person talked about loneliness, they would go like, what? What? But that's where I think we have to dig in, dig down, dig deeper into what we're dealing with. Laura did a phenomenal job this morning of that deep dig. You know, here's a picture of the brain. Here's the part that doesn't develop till you're 28 years old. Even later for guys. No offense. But one of the things we know is that is the case. That is the case. And that ability to make good choices and to make judgment. I want to tell you a little story. And then I want to share something and wrap up. I can't ever remember my time, but whatever. I'll figure it out. And I was asked, I will keep this anonymous, so all tech people do not freak out. I was asked to speak to a college, a large college that has really, really smart kids that come to it, all incoming freshmen. And I was asked to come and speak to them about the importance of connectedness and why it was so important to come into college and make friends and be friends and not just come and live with your screen. Okay? And so I said, okay, sure, I'll be happy to do that. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to Tech. It was before school started, and I had an auditorium full of freshmen, incoming freshmen that were so excited about being here and scared, whatever. So I talked about connectedness and the importance of it and the importance of being friends with each other and knowing each other. So after the things we talked about, I asked them to form dyads, like two people together, and talk. And I said, I want you to talk about two things. Number one, I want you to talk about what you're the most excited about being in school. What is the most exciting thing about being here at Texas Tech? And the second thing I want you to talk about is what you're the most afraid of. What's the scariest thing for you about being here? So they got started into dyads. I had this one group of girls. They were so cute. This one girl started crying before she ever got started because she was so scared she was going to disappoint her dad. Okay, that was her fear. She was going to disappoint her dad. So then all of a sudden I see this hand go up in the back. Well, it's not really in the back. He was really right there. And I said, yes. And he said, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. And he goes, can we just FaceTime? I didn't lose it, but I came close. I said, no, I personally would rather you have a little face time. And I tell you that story because I want you to get it. I want you to understand that we're living in a whole different world. This is not the speech that I gave 3 years ago or whenever it was. It was not the one that I've given 20 years. It's not any of that. That everything has changed. And if we don't get it, we're going to miss it. We're going to miss it. And I don't want us to miss it because the more we miss it, the more we see what Laura presented. The more devastating our drug problem becomes. There are people that are isolated. There are people that are lonely. There are people that are struggling, and substances become their answer. We can't let that happen any more than it's already happening. We can't, because it gets harder and harder and harder to get people into recovery that have been using since they were 9, 10, or 11 years old. That's all they know. That's all they know of adolescence are substances. That was all he knew of adolescence was substances. And I think we're at a critical time in our field, in our discipline, in our work environments where we have a chance to make a difference in ways we hadn't thought about. We have a chance to connect to people. We have a chance to be kind to people. We have a chance to show love and caring to people. We are dealing with the disease of isolation. And we have a chance to impact that if we make a decision to do some things differently than we have done before. I want to wrap up with this quote, and I'm just going to tell you this. This quote has nothing to do with this field, okay? It is just my favorite quote. And so I figure since I have a captive audience, I can share my favorite quote, and Megan's not going to grab me off the stage, and pull me down. But I want you to hear this, and I want you to think about it, and I want you to understand that in so many ways, this speaks to the field that we work in and that we care about and that we give our time and attention to. It was written by a man named Dick Foth, and who has written some fabulous books. One of them is called Known, and it's about building and establishing meaningful relationships. And I just want to share this because I have a captive audience, and it's important to me. It's important to me to think this way and to share that the way it brings us together. This is what Dick Foth has said. Apart from great ideas that move us, life revolves around two things: relationships and money. And only one of those makes us rich. And so I want you to think about that. When you think about people that you work with, that you struggle with, that are isolated and that are possibly lonely, and that have struggled all their lives, possibly since teenage years, with substance abuse, that the one thing in our life that makes us rich are our relationships. And I can say that about some of the people in this room, that without them, I wouldn't have as rich a life as I do. So, Megan, thank you for asking me, for being patient with me, and I appreciate all of you that are here. Go out and do the hard stuff. That's what we're here for.